Hello and welcome into another edition of the Three Mob Podcast. I am John Kurtz, joined by Cole Manbeck and Derek Young. You know Derek from K-State Online. Cole Manbeck, former K-State beat writer for the Manhattan Mercury. We have a very special announcement that we would like to make here heading into this pod before we get into everything basketball recruiting, football recruiting, because it's pretty hot and heavy on both fronts right now. We would like to thank our latest sponsor. We have signed a six-figure deal with Global. So thank you to Global for their support once again. No, wait, I'm just kidding. Wrong guy. That was Antoine Davis. We'll get to Global later. We do seriously want to thank Holiday Distillery and 360 Vodka, though. Plus their new bourbon that I just saw our guy BJ, who runs everything here at KCSN. I saw he was getting a little taste test of the bourbon that's coming out. So you'll have to hit up BJ to find out his review. But spoiler alert, I saw that he said it was pretty great. So whatever it is that you're celebrating, hook it up with Holiday Distillery, 360 Vodka, the new bourbon that is coming out. Lots of great stuff, and they support us here on the pod, which we appreciate greatly. Guys, it's a mixed bag. Football recruiting was great over the weekend. K-State landed 4 players that you're going to see in purple the upcoming season at areas of need. But unfortunately, this long, winding recruitment of Antoine Davis came to an end, and it came to an end with him staying at Detroit Mercy to play for his father. Now, this was one of the most wild, topsy-turvy recruitments I can remember in a long time, where you asked BYU people leading up to this, they were thinking it was going to be K-State. All of us were thinking it was going to be BYU. We thought Maryland was gone. Jeff Goodman comes in and says it's Maryland and BYU. And then Antoine Davis says, no, that's actually not the case. I don't know where that came from. Then we find out about a Global sponsorship 20 minutes before the announcement is supposed to drop, and everybody thinks it's BYU, like it's Jimmer Fredette's company. And then all told, he's staying at Detroit. Let's just get your initial reactions here. DY, you start first. Your initial reaction to the wild saga that was the Antoine Davis recruitment.
It was wild. That's, I guess, my initial reaction. We used to think, there were some recruitments of 5-star football players that were pretty, bizarre a few years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. We were like, oh man, I love recruiting. And we've really taken that to the next level in the modern era, because there's so many recruitments that are much like that, and so many that are now affected by name, image, and likeness. So it's just, it was a product of the bizarre recruiting world that we're currently living in. I will say, this is going to be more of a pat on my own back here. On our last podcast, and I think I wrote about it several times, I said the swerve that I could see was him staying at Detroit. So yeah. That's ultimately what happened. I do think BYU was a much larger player than any of us were considering in our last podcast. I don't think we give them enough credit for where they were. And I think that was indicative of, the sponsorship being, or the endorsement, whatever you want to call it, the marketing deal being tied to Jimmer Fredette's company. I think that's an indication that BYU was solidly.
Okay, do we know for sure that was Jimmer Fredette's company? Is that
he certainly made it sound like it too, because then he got pretty involved in the last hour before Antoine's decision as well. And it seemed like he was under the impression that BYU was still going to get him at that point.
It did. It very much, judging by Jimmer Fredette's tweets, it very much did seem like he
I think he was quite surprised by it as well. So I think BYU was definitely in it. I don't think Jeff Goodman was as informed as he thought he was, because
Jeff Goodman can get the hell out of here.
Maryland was, I think, for all intents and purposes, Maryland might have been 5th out of the 5 schools. I don't know that they really played a large part. So a bizarre recruitment. There's a part of me that says Kansas State fans have probably the biggest reason to feel a little bit heartbroken, but then you think about that last 24 hours for BYU, and I think they might have got the largest shaft.
Cole, your reaction?
It was a roller coaster, quite the saga of events that we saw unfold. I went into last week still feeling good about him coming to Kansas State. Then as we started to text and hear more things coming out about it, became more skeptical that it was going to be K-State. And then I think heading into the weekend, we thought it was likely going to go to BYU. At least I did. And then the Goodman tweet today, didn't feel good about it. Then he corrects the Goodman tweet, start to think, okay, maybe K-State is still a player in this and that it may be K-State. Then we see the NIL deal about Globals, which I don't even know what the hell a Global is. being manufactured in China. What the hell is that? I have no idea. Ridiculous.
Lost to China.
Yeah. And so that comes out, and I think I texted you guys, well, that makes me think he may stay at Detroit, right? Because that's a manufactured outsourced NIL deal that Detroit probably wouldn't have been able to come up with, but they were able to outsource it to China. Basically, like you see with manufacturing, they outsource the NIL deal through Globals to China.
So ridiculous, man.
To get a 6-figure deal, and he's going to divide it up to his teammates as well, so that he can shoot 80% of the shots and try to pad his individual stats and get the scoring record.
Can we talk about the NIL deal not even being that good? Like, he has to sell the balls himself. Like, they're not selling it for him.
Yeah, well, Cole, you did all this research, right? Okay, see, I pretty much just wrote this off, and I'll make my point about this later. Like, I'm disappointed. I don't think it's completely meltdown worthy, even for K-State's team next year. The people that are trying to equate this to like a big picture, college sports are burning. I don't think this is the case. This is not, for a lot of reasons, this is not the one to freak out about. But
No.
Cole, I know you definitely went down the wormhole of like reading Mike Davis's comments, his father, who of course was the former Texas Southern and Indiana head coach. So tell us a little bit more about this deal that Antoine Davis has with Global and the actual details of this thing.
So I'm just going to read just straight from it here off my phone from a piece by Adam Zagoria. Mike Davis spoke to Adam Zagoria. He previously had told the Detroit News his son would transfer because he could earn 6 figures in NIL opportunities. That's not surprising to any of us. And then he mentions, this is a direct quote, they're going to give him like 20,000 balls just to sell, and then he's going to give a percentage to his teammates, adding that his son could potentially make up to 6 figures in total. Here's another quote. His NIL is like the real NIL because he has to sell balls. He has to sell that basketballs that he wants to share with his team and with the other athletes on the campus too. That's the biggest part of the deal. So that's what he's got to do. He's got to sell the basketballs, I guess, to make a deal. Some glow-in-the-dark balls.
What if he can't sell? Well, I mean, I can't imagine this is a product that flies off the shelf.
And here's the thing. I mean,
I'd buy one.
I got to be honest with you guys.
Antoine's got a customer.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you guys. I didn't know who Antoine Davis was before all of this, right? And I probably should have, but I haven't watched a Detroit game on TV. And you guys know I watch a lot of basketball and a lot of random basketball.
That's very true.
And I didn't know. So what are the marketing opportunities here for him staying at Detroit? I mean, good for him. It's clearly, I think it came down to a few things. Play for his dad again. I can totally understand that. He's got an opportunity to make some money while doing so. I would say that, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way, this is just my perception, that he entered the portal and he kind of played the game the right way, and that his intention all along was probably to go back to Detroit. And he made a name for himself while in the portal. He boosted his followers. You look at his Instagram followers, they boosted a significant amount. He created a lot of engagements and impressions, and I think he boosted his value through that, got the NIL deal, then got the opportunity to go back to Detroit. You look at the quote from Mike Davis here today, and this is the only thing that would have me concerned about Antoine Davis on Kansas State's roster. Don't get me wrong, this isn't sour grapes. I wanted him at Kansas State. But the first things that Mike Davis says about him returning and the key things, quote, first, he's trying to get the consecutive games, 115 in a row. He's at 111 where he scored 10 points or more. Then he's trying to get the all-time 3-point record, which he's 80 away from. And then he's trying to get to 3,000 points, which only 10 people got to 3,000. Then at the very end, he mentions, oh yeah, and the NCAA tournament. So is it more about trying to set individual records? Would he have fit well? You know, is he going to be he wouldn't have been a high usage. He would have been a high usage player at K-State, but he wouldn't have been nearly as high usage as he's going to be at Detroit. So it makes me think that that's a large part of it. And then, just getting back to the other thing on the NIL deal, John and DY, Mike Davis says the Monday, the NIL deal just happened to come through the day his son was announcing his future plans. So he's saying that he may have been going elsewhere until that happened today, that this just came through today, which,
if you believe Goodman, I mean, he followed all this with a tweet. So he's the one that broke the Global thing, right? I mean, I guess Jeff Goodman has great sources in China at Global Industries. He breaks that story and then comes back on the other side talking about it and was like, hey, it sounds like he was leaning toward BYU. but then, at the last minute decided for whatever reason to go this route. So, whether he's being spoon-fed that by Mike Davis, there are a million things that could be happening here. One, he could be saving face for the fact that he tweeted out, he just blasted out there that Maryland was involved, which to anybody that closely followed this, sounded very silly. Or two, he's being spoon-fed the information by Mike Davis, and that's the narrative that they're trying to get out there. But I suppose there is Route 3 where his source at Global Industries was giving him that information as well. And, you can take it or leave it for whatever it's worth. Just pointing that out.
I want to make one last point, and you guys have kind of hinted at this, and I agree. This isn't to say I'm a huge supporter of what's going on out there with the NIL and the transfer portal. Some of it is a little cringeworthy to me, but I agree that this is not the hill to die on. And to be honest, the Antoine Davis thing is probably pretty innocent in nature compared to a lot of the stories that we read about on a daily basis anymore. I mean, his NIL deal, even if it is technically tied to recruiting, even though it's not supposed to be, it still has a lot of the spirit of what NIL was intended to be when it was legalized. It's an actual marketing deal.
Chinese blowing basketballs. You're right, Derek.
It's an actual marketing deal, and he actually used it to stay at his school that doesn't necessarily have the same NIL opportunities, in-house that even Kansas State would have. So in a way, he almost kind of created the playbook or blueprint for some of these smaller schools to be able to hang on to someone of that nature, of that caliber. But with that being said, I am still skeptical that this is going to be a very lucrative opportunity because he's got to sell these own balls. And like I said, I'm not sure this is a product that flies off the shelf.
Well, yeah, I fully agree with you, Derek. I mean, there are a couple things here. One, the initial response that I saw from so many people, K-State fans upset about this, was like, oh, college sports is doomed. K-State will never be able to compete in this era.
Right.
This story, like the way that this happened, the way that it went down, should give you more faith that K-State can compete in this era, because freaking Detroit Mercy competed in this era against K-State, and BYU, who has a lot of money. I mean, the NCAA, that was one of the first schools they named in terms of schools that they were looking into. They had already at least started to send some feelers out there on their NIL stuff that's going on at BYU. Detroit Mercy competed here because they were able to outsource an NIL deal there. So this, if anything, should give you more faith, like bigger picture, that K-State can compete. And then if we're talking about this feels sleazy and he used the system. I mean, look, like how often have coaches leveraged their situations for more money or a better job or whatever? And they're doing it like behind closed doors where nobody is finding out about it until the last minute. Like this is the kids finally having an opportunity to do that. And I know, Cole, you kind of seem more on the side of like this was all pretty premeditated. I think there's probably an element of that. I don't know that I'm quite as cynical on like that's 100% how it went down. I think he may have gone through the process and been trying to feel it out and been trying to feel out what kind of deals would be out there, like this global thing, right? That turns up for him. And at the end of the day, just decided, hey man, if I can still make some money, stay at home with my dad and go chase the scoring record because I know I'll get that many shots up at Detroit. Like I can understand how you would at least arrive at that conclusion. So, and in the end, I mean, this is a kid that's staying at the small school, not bailing on the big schools for a bigger bag. I think he would have made more money for sure at BYU, staying at the small school to play for his dad, go chase a record. I mean, honestly, like that's a pretty cool story if you just remove K-State from it. So I would just kind of beg of people to take your own feelings about it out of it, that K-State did not land the kid and realize this is not, there are plenty of cases to be the hill to die on right now. If you think that college athletics is all going to hell, this is not one of them for many reasons.
The only part I don't love is you basically had to weaponize the transfer portal to do it. That just seems a little weird and it invites tampering, which we've seen. So I don't love that part.
But I do appreciate, to the point you guys made, that he ended up going back to Detroit because he took a significant pay cut in what he did, right? I would have been more sour on it if he went to a place like BYU, and then I know it's just purely about the money. So he could have made a lot more at these other schools, I'm sure. And he chose to go back to Detroit, where he spent his previous 4 years, and play for his dad and not make nearly as much money and divide it among his teammates, which is what he says he plans to do. So I do have a decent appreciation for what he did do. I would have felt a lot more distasteful about it if he went to a place like BYU, because then I would have just felt like it was purely about the money.
Which, some of this is going to be, and I'm not saying that those kind of decisions are not being made out there, but this one actually is like somewhat admirable because of that. I think the other thing, people would want to know, and I'm sure there would be some pushback. Well, I mean, John, what about K-State's NIL deal? Like, why couldn't K-State just up the ante, offer more money? Again, I don't think this decision was ultimately about money in the end, but I would also say, and I know this is something you guys have really echoed, that, I think K-State was certainly very competitive here. And I think at one point in time, it may have really been that Antoine Davis, if he was going to leave Detroit, would have been headed to K-State because of a competitive NIL deal and how the visit went down and all of those things. That's where I tend to be less cynical about the whole process being some totally preconceived plot, like diabolical plot by him. But even if it was, again, I would stress, even if it was, and this is where I come down very pro player here, like the players have never had that kind of leverage, those opportunities. That's a pretty smart move, honestly, if that's what he did. Sucks for K-State, but it's a pretty smart move. And if a kid from K-State, like if Deuce Vaughn were to do something like that and then come back to K-State in the end, like we would all applaud it and love it. It's just kind of whether or not it happens to your school.
How great of a kid is Deuce Vaughn, though, to have not done that? I mean, just phenomenal that he didn't enter the transfer portal and try to go out to bid. I mean, I just love Deuce Vaughn and Felix and Dkuzama. I mean, I know these guys are making stuff right now through NIL, but they could have made a lot more by entering the portal. And that's not to get off topic, but really just a great K-State fan should have a great appreciation for how they've done this and gone about it.
Well, do either of you guys have anything to add on the financial front? Because I know we've talked about that a little bit before, but for anybody that might be freaking out and thinking this is some sign that K-State is not going to be very competitive in an NIL world, because my stance and my thought really hasn't changed on that. I think K-State still will be pretty competitive in said NIL world.
I think they will be too. I think that the fans that are skeptical of that will probably be skeptical until there is tangible evidence to suggest it, and there probably isn't yet. And if there might be already, it's just some of that stuff doesn't, flow to the actual surface either.
Yeah, I think we have pretty good information that Kansas State has a lot of resources when it comes to name, image, and likeness. I think they've got a strong financial backing through the collective. So I'm not concerned at all about K-State competing on the NIL front. I think if this was purely an NIL play, I think K-State would have been right there with Antoine Davis. I think they have the resources to compete for a lot of the top tier recruits in the country, when it comes to, I shouldn't say football because obviously they're not going to beat out in Alabama or anything, but I do think they can be very competitive in the recruiting landscape based off what we know and the resources that we've heard they have.
Well, so the problem you face now with basketball is like you do need somebody to literally score the ball. I mean, whether that ball was glowing, whether it was made in America, whether it was made in Russia or made in China, whatever, like somebody's got to put the ball in the basket. And well, I'm a big fan of Jarrell Colbert and Cam Carter and some of the names that we've seen already be, chased down by this staff. They need wings and they need guys who can score, or else Marquise Noel is going to have to score about 40 points per game coming up this year. So I understand being antsy about that. I mean, I'm a little bit antsy about that, even though it still seems like this coaching staff just projects a sense of calm about it. Like, it does not seem to be panic within the walls of the ICE family basketball training facility, right, in Manhattan right now. So I still think you have to be a little bit patient here. I don't think it's some kind of massive indictment on this staff. I do think there probably is a dose of like, hey, we got real hot and heavy excited by the press conference, by some of the names that we were hearing, by the fact that Julian Phillips was going to come visit. And then that didn't materialize. Now you lose Antoine Davis. It feels like a couple tough blows, some momentum going away. But I think like some of this is just circumstantial things that are out of their control and may not be indicative of a bigger picture deal. But I think another part of it is like just realizing, hey, as good of recruiters as these guys are, right? Uric Malagy was recruiting at Texas last year. Like he's recruiting to Texas with Chris Beard and like a big time program there. So it's a little bit different when you're a team that's finished last or next to last in the Big 12 the last 3 years, and you're just trying to get it jump started and going again, and you don't have all those inherent advantages, right? I think there's probably just a little dose of reality with this that, hey, as good as this staff can be recruiting, and I firmly believe in them, and I still think Colbert, Carter, getting a couple of visitors like Layden Blocker, a top 50 kid, in here this past weekend. Like, they're still doing great things, but they are probably going to have to go out on the court and actually like show something substantive on the court to really start to build that momentum and be able to unlock some of the recruiting potential that they do have.
Yeah, and the only comment I would have too is their hit rate's probably still 50%, maybe a little bit better, or just around there. It's a pretty high rate when it comes to recruiting. I think you have to understand, especially when these become a little bit more national profile in nature, and more hotly contested. The stakes are going to seem pretty high. But it's normal for even like the blue bloods to hit 30-40% of recruiting battles. I mean, you're going to miss a lot. You can't get burned twice and think that the walls are collapsing either. So I think that a little perspective is needed at times, because the recruiting is, you have to have thick skin and a heavy stomach to really be able to consume it year in and year out all year, because that's just the way it is. But in terms of the specifics and maybe what's next, and to shine a light on maybe some positivity or optimism, or maybe a light at the end of the tunnel, I would say that, sources have suggested to us that, there's still around 30, 40, maybe even more kids than that that are in the transfer portal that are also in the NBA draft process, which is a very weird time too, right? If they're really good enough players to be in the NBA draft process, why do they feel the need to transfer? But that's the world we're in. Think about that. It's F.A. Abagidi from Washington State. Really good player. Could stay in the draft, but he's in the transfer portal. He's not going to stay at Washington State. I'm blanking on some names here, but I think the Mosley kid from Missouri State, another one. Obviously, he's going to transfer up, but another really good player that could stay in the draft, but it's probably going to stay in college basketball. So there's still plenty of talent available that they should still feel good about their chances with. And I think D. Scott Fritchen from Kansas State now, writing for Kansas State. I think he interviewed Coach Tang, who kind of hinted that they expected to get some late ads even at the end of June or the beginning of July.
Yeah, and let me just say too, I want to emphasize here, for anybody that would levy the criticism that, this staff has not proven their recruiting chops. Like, in the last week, they've had Layden Blocker on campus, who is a 4 or 5-star prospect, depending on where you look, with a Kansas offer that Kansas legitimately wants. He was on campus. He took pictures in K-State gear. He was on campus. So was Sean Phillips. DY, what is Sean Phillips' highest ranking right
50,
now?
Number 50.
That's a top 50 player for 2022. Like, those guys are on campus. They already landed Jarrell Colbert and Cam Carter as transfers, who, if you take their recruiting profiles coming out of high school, are either higher than anything Bruce Weber recruited, or at least at the very upper echelon of what you were recruiting under Bruce Weber. So, like, they have still proven the recruiting chops already with what they've been able to do, taking over a program that, again, has finished last or next to last each of the last 3 years. So I think that much, you still need to have faith that these guys do have a plan and have a shot with some of those guys that you just mentioned. And Cole, I know you're a big fan of a lot of those guys too.
I just have a lot of confidence and think that they have a belief in what they're doing, and they're not going to panic. And we heard when we had Coach Tang on 3 weeks ago on the podcast, he talked about how they weren't going to rush things, and that they knew the transfer portal, there'd be more guys entering it. Some of the best players would enter those last couple of weeks. He proved to be correct there. So I think they're just really patient with how they're going about it. You would have thought, maybe they would have had some 2022 kids in on visits this last weekend with Layden Blocker, but they focused on Blocker. And I think they'll probably bring in some, 22 kids here in the next week or so. And they probably have made some progress on some guys that we don't even know about at this point. It's kind of hard to gather some of that information and details. Layden Blocker, you mentioned him. Not only did they get him to visit, they got him to take an official visit. You get 5 of those. He took his very first official visit to K-State. He's a 5-star by some services and the number 47 player by rivals. He's taken a visit to KU as an official visit as well. So this is kind of the fish Kansas State's swimming with right now in the deep sea with some of these battles with the elite programs in America. You look at guys they've had visit. Is Antoine Davis the only one that's actually visited K-State that they've now lost out on officially? Sean Phillips is still up in the air, right? He visited LSU this last weekend. He's visiting Georgetown this next weekend. And then on May 17th, he's making a decision. K-State is probably in his top 3. He released a top 5, but he's never visited Miami. So I'm not sure that's a concern. I think K-State's squarely in the mix there for a top 50 player. And then Davis is the only one that they've had on campus that they didn't get. And obviously we just talked about the unique circumstances of that one. So I would not panic yet. I get that there is a little bit of anxiety about having 7 scholarship guys on the team, and we're getting closer and closer to mid-May. You want to have guys in place by June. But as DY just mentioned, this NBA draft process is going to go on for the next few weeks. So they're going to probably exercise some patience and use confidence that they're going to, get a couple of those guys that pull out of the NBA draft, hope they can get them, and they're in good enough position to do so. So I still trust in the staff. I mean, I think it's going to be fine. I understand that some fans might be a little critical now because they still don't have, they don't really have a proven wing player yet. They need scoring. Antoine Davis would have helped with that. But I still think there's options out there. I mean, you got Umoja Gibson. I think he'd be a big addition. Yeah. And there's some, obviously Mosley feels like a long shot because of his connections to some of the KU guys. But, with Rodney Perry going to be the final assistant on the staff, I think K-State has a shot there. We'll see what they can do. On the NIL front, can they be competitive enough? They can divert some of those resources they were going to use toward Antoine Davis now, right, toward someone like Mosley. So there's still plenty of talent out there. It's just, a matter of getting them to visit. And then I feel confident the staff will close on some of them.
2 other names that might be worth bringing up, and one we'll have to see. I think he has to get a waiver to be immediately eligible. Is Grant Sherfield, who was an elite scorer in Nevada. He's in the transfer portal and also the NBA draft process, like many others as well. I know he's been linked to Texas Tech, but he's also got a connection to Rodney Perry that is an interesting one too. So that's one to consider. And I don't know if they want to bark down this tree or not, but Matthew Mayer from Baylor is in the transfer portal and in the NBA draft process. So if he comes back, is that an option? Jerome Tang's coached him for a handful of years now. So maybe that's an opportunity and that's an avenue as well. But that also brings me to another point. Like, here's what I don't understand about the transfer portal a little bit, right? Like, Matthew Mayer's had a really good career. If he comes back to school, why wouldn't he just stay at Baylor?
So he's already announced that he's in the portal and doing the draft thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing as you were rattling that off. I'm like, I would love to dream. I mean, look, I love Mayer as a player. I would love to dream about that, but you're right. Like, you just say it out loud. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, if you're a guy with just 1 year left, and look, I love K-State. I'm not saying like, well, why would you come to K-State? But I mean, look, like Baylor, that's a pretty well-oiled machine right now.
Right.
But there's no adjustment or anything. Like, you just go play, and you're clearly going to be playing at a high level next year with a very good team.
But he seems insistent on leaving because he's been linked to North Carolina and Illinois already.
Illinois? Yeah. What? Brad, go away. Go away, Brad. Feels like every player that K-State gets involved with now, like Illinois is somehow involved in there too. Go away.
North Carolina got Brady Manick. It would seem a lot like that if they got Matthew Mayer too.
Well, the interesting thing about Mayer, though, leaving, I mean, isn't this going to be his year to really be kind of the go-to guy at Baylor? I mean, they've lost a lot of guys. I mean, Kendra's gone.
Yeah, but they are bringing in Keontae George, who's supposed to be a big-time stud for them. Yep, so we'll see.
Well, either way, we are in we're just in uncharted waters, like all the way around. So I think that adds to a lot of the anxiety here. It's like nobody in college basketball really is used to the current climate that we're in, and it seems so crazy. And there are a lot of things that are very anxiety-inducing because they're just so damn new. And nobody knows what to really ultimately expect here. So I think that's playing into it. There's probably also, expectation-wise, we had all these visions when things were really popping off at first with Jerome Tang recruiting. We had all these visions of like the Bob Huggins 2.0 class where he had that whole year to recruit. And he's, Michael Beasley, Bill Walker, OJ Mayo, DeJuan Blair, Kevin Love, all these names that were linked to K-State at that time. And they landed, obviously, a tremendous recruiting class. There were like these visions of recreating that, which were probably very unrealistic in the first place anyway. So I think all that, it's like managing expectations and then managing this new world that we're in and managing a social media world where everybody, has quick hot takes that they can fire off all the time. I think that's probably the source of a lot of the consternation here with basketball right now. So that's my final word on it. Again, I would stress these guys have still shown you a lot. They've still shown me a lot with the chops that they actually have recruiting-wise. It's going to require some patience, but K-State is far from the only school that is in this position right now having to exercise said patience.
In general, I think they're pretty calculated, and I think that's a good thing to have and to be confident in. And this is probably a good segue because I imagine we're going to get into the football recruiting a little bit too. But you talked about uncharted territory, and I think a lot of it is with NIL, transfer portal, all of that going on. But it's May 9th, right? We're only 6-7 months away from the initial signing period. I think even a handful of years ago, maybe even not too long, maybe just a couple years ago, I think the average recruiting class for the current cycle right now in football would probably still already be in the 13 to 15 range, because I think you saw like a rush of commits, a lot in football, at least in the spring portion of the calendar. And I think a lot of teams would be anywhere from like 12 to 14, 15 commits this time. I think Kansas State's been around 10 before a couple of different times that I've covered them. But I looked at it today in the team rankings just to see what, that's a good way to see how many commits a lot of teams have. Man, there's very few teams that have a double-digit number of commits. I think at the top, the first 20, 25 teams I saw, only 2 had a double-digit number of commits. One was Texas Tech. That's why they're number 1. It's because they have 20 commits already. And the next closest is Notre Dame with 12, and everyone else is in the single digits. I think that shows you how much the recruiting landscape is changing in a flash, because it's not typically that way on May 9th.
That's excellent perspective. Really excellent perspective. And it brings into focus now, yes, the football recruiting, which, what you're talking about, DY, is the class of 23, where K-State fans are waiting on Dylan Edwards and Avery Johnson, Joe Otting, like this big in-state class. And obviously the dynamics on that continue to shift and swirl, and nobody is willing to go ahead and make a commitment there right now, which again, very par for the course. So take that into consideration. If you are frustrated that K-State hasn't landed a commitment from one of those guys, there are a lot of prospects, like DY said, increasingly more that are waiting longer and longer. But in the meantime, if you're thinking about this 2022 team, like what K-State's going to have on the field now, that's where this past weekend becomes massive, because these holes, and I think we even talked about it on the last pod, like, hey, we're a little bit uneasy about this. K-State loses Marvin Martin at safety. They're really thin at defensive back. They're really thin at linebacker, at running back, a little bit at wide receiver. Like, what are they going to do in all these spots? Well, how about add 4 players from either the JUCO or transfer portal ranks that can just plug and play right away? This weekend, it all unfolded. Jordan Wright, junior college defensive back who had an offer from Florida State. Junior college running back Anthony Frias, who TCU came in and offered at the last minute. Ole Miss transfer wide receiver Jaden Jackson, who was not very productive at Ole Miss, but had a nice recruiting pedigree coming out of high school and obviously was playing in the SEC. And then Prairie View A&M safety Drake Cheatham, who more accolades than Reggie Stubblefield had coming out of Prairie View A&M, and gets the Sauce Boss seal of approval. And we know how well Stubblefield worked out for K-State last year. So there's really, I don't have no notes, 10 out of 10, no notes. And I'm not saying all these guys are going to be stars, but K-State badly needed depth at every single one of these positions. And they went out and added guys that, like, right now, I think that's as good as you're going to do for almost anybody, but especially, a school in K-State's position right now. I mean, this has me feeling good about some of the momentum that's building up on the football front recruiting wise.
Yeah, I mean, they had a lot of their starters solidified already, right? I think we can all agree on that. You take the top 22 for Kansas State, and you probably feel pretty good about what they can throw out there. But it was just like a handful of spots. You're like, man, do they have a number 2? Do they have a number 3? And in this day and age of modern college football, you need those number 2s and number 3s because the game is so fast. There's so many snaps. Now, there hasn't been for Kansas State in the past because they run a little bit slower offense, but that's probably going to speed up a bit too. But their defense is going to be out there for a lot of snaps. That's just what college football is. And it just feels like maybe they didn't go out and get world beaters, but it felt like they went out and just filled their needs and maybe completed the team enough to where they put their top end talent in position to compete for a Big 12 championship this year. Like I think we felt like they had the top end talent. Let's be honest, they have 3 potential All-Americans on the team. I don't know when the last time we could say that. Kansas State had 3 potential All-Americans on their team.
Who's the third? Oh, okay, BB. Okay, got
BB,
it.
Deuce Vaughn, Felix, Andy Dkuzama. I mean, BB was first team All Big 12 last year at left tackle. I think it's safe to say that he's an All-American candidate as well. That's 3 All-American candidates. Not a whole lot of teams can say that. I mean, we could say that's rare for Kansas State, but there's probably very few Big 12 teams that can say they actually have 3 legit All-American candidates of that magnitude. So I think just filling those needs, even if it wasn't world beaters, that really just puts themselves into position where they have the depth to possibly hang in there and compete for a Big 12 championship. And that was probably their goal. And let's not mistake this too. Their last, 6 recruiting wins, I want to say, I think we can confidently say that 5 of them were against Power 5 competition. They beat Iowa State and Kansas for Will Ancio and Wesley Fair from Wichita. They beat TCU and 2 Pac-12 schools for Anthony Frias. They beat Utah for Jaden Jackson, and they beat Florida State and West Virginia for Jordan Wright. So I also think you could take what happened over the weekend and kind of put it full picture as they're really starting to turn the tide on the recruiting trail, in my opinion.
I mean, the Jordan Wright one was startling, right? DY. I mean, the guy, he was on his Florida State visit, canceled his West Virginia visit right at the time. And you're thinking, well, the way these things usually go, he's not leaving Florida State without being committed. And then he basically leaves Florida State and commits to K-State within hours, right? I mean, that was shocking.
Yeah, that's exactly how it went.
If you saw the dumpy facilities that Florida State was rolling out there,
well,
K-State too.
Yeah, but it's I love Jordan Wright. I mean, I think it's a huge addition. Now, look, I'm not a scouting expert or anything, but I watched his highlight tape, and his coverage skills are terrific. I mentioned DJ Reed last week where it kind of felt similar. California JUCO, sneak him in late, try to get him here. I'm not saying he's going to be DJ Reed, but he's very talented. And I love, some of not only in his coverage skills, but the kid plays so damn hard. I mean, there was a play where he missed a tackle on the kickoff return. He was the first player down the field, missed a tackle. The guy's 15 yards away from him, and he runs him down at the 50-yard line. Got up off the ground, ran him down. And then another one where the receiver, not his receiver, he came across the field and took just an impressive pursuit angle, pushed him out of bounds at the 1-yard line, came across the field. I mean, he is so fast. His hips, everything. I think he's a terrific ad. And he gives them a good piece for 2 years, right? So if this is Julius Brents and Echo Boydo's last year, he gives you a guy that can be that fill-in that really takes over the lead at the cornerback position, but also is a guy that I would expect to play and rotate in a lot this year. I think it's a phenomenal ad. Yeah, I really like Drake Cheatham, from Prairie View A&M. I would hesitate, K-State fans. He might not be Reggie Stubblefield. You might not have the swag of Reggie Stubblefield. Who knows how that's going to go, but he was all SWAC first team in 2019 and 2021. They didn't have a season really in 2020. So in the SWAC, so the last 2 years, first team all SWAC, and he had nearly 90 tackles in 2021, 5 interceptions, was a terrific player in that league, 5'10", 190-pound safety, and he's versatile as well. And the thing that I really like about him, guys, is in the big games they played, so this last year they played at Texas A&M midway through the year, he led the team with 12 tackles, had an interception. In 2019, they played at Houston. He led the team with 12 tackles, had a fumble recovery, and a tackle for loss. So he has performed against the better competition when he was at Prairie View A&M, and his coach just raves about him. I read an article last night. He's an engineering major. He got his engineering degree. He's incredibly intelligent. And he just spends a ton of time in the film room and is really a leader at Prairie View. So I think K-State's getting a great locker room guy like they had with Reggie Stubblefield. I just think the K-State really hit it well this weekend with the guys they're bringing in to plug those holes. Because as we talked last week, I feel like this could be a really good season for K-State. I think K-State has a shot to get to Arlington, but they had to plug some holes and get some depth. There's still a couple pieces. They need linebacker depth, right? So there's some spots still to fill, but this was a big weekend that Kansas State had.
Well, I mean, speaking of that, it's not totally done, right, DY? I mean, they're still on the lookout for a linebacker.
Yeah, and they had one on campus, and Gavin Forsha from Tyler Junior College that they're waiting. He's very much on the cusp of adding more big Power 5 offers, so that one could get interesting. Rutgers and USC have both visited with him today, actually, and are considering offering his mom is from California, so the offer from USC could be particularly appealing. We'll see how that unfolds. They could bring in another linebacker on a visit too, it sounds like. I just had some comments. I was going to agree with Cole there too on Jordan Wright. I think the bonus there is getting him for maybe a second season, because if Julius Brents and Echo Boydo are both out the door, you're going to need some immediate fill-ins at corner, and he would be certainly what the doctor ordered in that regard. And I think they're pretty favorable about Omar Daniels and hoping he'll be that next guy as well. The fact that, they beat Florida State for him and he was in Tallahassee over the weekend, that's a good thing. And it's interesting, right? Who were the other two candidates that were highly considered and interviewed along with Chris Kleiman for the Kansas State job? Mike Norvell and Neil Brown. Those are the two coaches they beat out for Jordan Wright. So a little bit of irony in that as well. So just a good weekend. Hopefully there's more. I think they're going to have 2 more official visitors this coming weekend as well. It sounds like not pinned down just yet. I also liked Cole saying SWAC over and over and over again there. That was interesting.
Well, he's from the SWAC.
What do you want? I mean,
SWAC. It's like an onomatopoeia. SWAC.
It's very close to Mac. We know how much Cole loves the Mac, so he can emphasize it. Yeah, Swaction. You watch any Swaction last year?
I can't say that I have watched a lot of Swaction, but I'm going to need to get more engaged. Prairie View.
Yeah, we're going to keep recruiting the SWAC. You need to do your homework.
Well, I'm gonna get a subscription to make sure I watch some Prairie View games. They're going to become the new pipeline for Kansas State. We're going to get a secondary player every year out of there. So,
well, if we learn anything from the Reggie Stubblefield saga, it sounds like they could probably use an SID, Cole. So maybe you can.
Oh my gosh, their website is a mess. I mean, I went through their website about Cheatham. They had 2018 stats, and then I couldn't find anything else about him. I was like, 2018. I mean, so I was just looking.
No wonder Reggie Stubblefield was a Pro Bowler at Prairie View A&M.
And look, I'm sure the budget there is not in place for it. Like, I'm sure there's some poor student or somebody who has 7 jobs. I understand how the media relations world works. I don't mean to belittle or make fun from that standpoint, but it is funny that now, back to, okay. All right, fine. Let me just go back to glow balls. All right, everybody focus on glow balls. Make fun of the glow balls. All right.
What's our thoughts on Jaden Jackson? That's probably the one we talked the least about, and he's the actual Power 5 commitment, which is interesting.
I was just about to ask you, how would you power rank who you expect the most from / are most excited for? And honestly, I know you guys would expect look, Ole Miss receiver, SEC, Lane Kiffin, nice recruiting profile coming out of high school. He would be last on my list.
I think I would agree.
Maybe next to last. I mean, look, to me, the DBs stand out to me. I love the profile of Cheatham, especially a lot of that I'm sure is colored by what Reggie Stubblefield was last year. And then Jordan Wright, for obvious reasons, how the recruitment unfolded, the other offers that he had, position of need, 2 years, all that makes sense. Running back, I was just so freaked out by the spring, and nothing against Seawolf Jax Deneen, but when Jax Deneen is having to run some as the number 2 running back, I'm sitting there thinking listen, I mean, Deuce is amazing. Let's not get killed, and let's make sure that there's at least somebody to supplement there a little bit. So, a JUCO running back that had a Power 5 offer and that you can sell me on, hey, teams were late coming on to him because of the fact that everybody is so hyper-focused on the portal now. That, I mean, that's an interesting piece of this too. The junior college ranks could be an area where K-State could get back into mining a little bit and have a better time with it because everybody now is so focused on the portal. You can sell me on all of that. Jaden Jackson just wasn't very productive. So I don't know. I hope it works out here. I'm sure glad to have some depth and, a guy with higher upside, because I think they have a lot of high floor, low ceiling guys in the receiver core, and Jaden Jackson probably ups your peak range there, but we just haven't seen it from him at the college level.
I saw some nice practice clips that made me excited, but like you said, there's not a lot of game production, and this is 3 years, right? This isn't the 1 year maybe caught in a bad situation like Jarrell Colbert and Cam Carter on the basketball side, right? This is 3 years of Jaden Jackson playing in about 8 to 9 games, and
he did score on Bama. I saw he scored a touchdown against Bama. I mean, there's that.
Why don't you guys stop slandering my guy Jaden Jackson here? All right, Jaden Jackson only got to play in 4 games in the last 2 years combined. That's unfortunate, but he did have 4 catches for 30 yards against Alabama this year when he randomly appeared in a game. And did you not watch the Outback Bowl against Indiana last year when he had 4 catches for 38 yards? Solid. And then he did it against Alabama his freshman year in 2019, had a touchdown and 28 yards. So look, I think he's talented. You just got to hope it clicks here. I mean, it's obviously a wide receiver friendly system at Ole Miss and didn't really work out for him, and had a quarterback in Corral who was talented. So that's unfortunate. I go back to his recruiting profile. He had offers from Auburn, Georgia, all over the place. And, he just didn't pan out. So you just got to hope a fresh start works. I mean, K-State doesn't need him to be some bona fide star here. They just need him to be a solid, productive receiver that could maybe get you 300, 400 yards. And, you know, he still has the highest recruiting profile of any receiver on Kansas State's roster right now. So you hope it clicks here. Yeah, I don't really know what to make of that, but Thad Ward liked him. So we'll be curious what he can bring out from him. And then Frias, the running back. I mean, look, he's a physical runner. He has good balance. Power back, like his vision.
I think he's a perfect complement to Deuce Vaughn. I really do. That's why I would actually have him number 2, because I think he's a good fit to put with Deuce. And like Kurtz said, just, you know, a reason why I would have him number 2 of the 4 guys too, you could make an argument they needed that one the most, aside from corner.
Yep. Yeah. And I think he's a guy, just from reading about him, is just going to really work his rear end off and be in the weight room. And
3 years left.
Yeah, 3 years left. And, you know, you watch his highlight. He doesn't have a huge burst or anything explosive, but he's physical. He has good vision, good balance. I think he's a good ad. I think he'll be able to pass protect for K-State some as well and stay in those situations. He even showed some nice hands flaring out of the backfield on his tape. So, yeah, I think it's a big addition, and it gives him a little more time. Hopefully he can pick up the playbook quickly. Gives him a little more time with Giddens and Weathers, the freshman running backs who redshirted.
Yeah, was just going to say that. Like, he just buys you some time for the development process with the younger running backs on the roster. I mean, I feel like this is a caveat you have to add in any conversation like this in 2022, assuming that they stay, because it's very difficult to get guys that aren't playing to stay right now in college football. But assuming that they do, we've heard enough positives about, especially DJ Giddens, maybe Weathers as well, and I just haven't been as prudent to that information. But they seem to really like the potential that's there. It's just didn't feel like they were really ready to contribute at that kind of level yet this year. So this buys you some time, if nothing else.
And then a receiver with Jackson. Here's my thing. Because of the upside there, you hope it clicks, like Cole said, but because of the upside, you can kind of squint at this wide receiver core, even with Sebastian Taylor's probable departure, and kind of see like a pretty solid group, assuming that the RJ Garcia hype turns out to be what they want it to be, or that they think it can be. With Garcia and Jackson as your 4 and 5, I think you'd much rather that than, I mean, who's been the number 4, number 5 wide receivers the last few years? I think that's just an upgrade there. If the Garcia hype is real, if Jackson, if it clicks. No, it's a lot of ifs. And of course, Cade Warner, he came on late last year. There's no denying it. Cade Warner did come on late. Phillip Brooks is steady Eddie, and Malik Knowles still has that potential that we hope at some day rises to the surface at a consistent level. But all I'm saying is you can look at the receiver group now and squint and see a possibly solid, productive group. And I think hats off to Thad Ward as well, because he's really seemed to leave a positive mark on that group in a short amount of time.
And I would also imagine, to punctuate this discussion about receiver, the shift in offensive philosophy that they're going with here, having Cullen Klein run the offense and potentially, I mean, they're talking about being more up-tempo, certainly spreading the ball around more. They can show the tape of what they did against LSU. I mean, that has to help here, right? Like, are they landing Jaden Jackson if
probably not
everything is the same as last year?
He's at least going to visit Utah, right? In that scenario, he would at least visit Utah. He was offered by Utah out of official visit scheduled to Utah the week after. He's at least going to take that Utah visit in past years. That's why I kind of see, an upgrade in the recruiting level. That like they've kind of picked it up. And at this point, not sure if you guys would agree, this is probably an interesting wrinkle to discuss. I feel better about the wide receivers than I do the tight ends right now.
Oh, well, yes, absolutely. And I was, my initial reaction, if you were watching on YouTube and saw my face there when DY said, hey, you can squint and see a decent receiver room. That probably is a little bit harsh, because I'll be honest, you made a good case there. You laid it out and made a pretty good case. It's just, it's been so long. I mean, it's 2014 is the last time K-State had a good receiver room, right? I mean, is there any denying that? 2014, when it's Curry Sexton, Tyler Lockett, and they both had 1,000-yard seasons. I mean, they have not had a good receiver room since then. So it just is kind of one of those.
17 or 18 wasn't bad, right? With Byron Pringle.
I guess, but like Pringle and Zuber. Yeah. Okay.
And they had Dalton Schoen with them. It wasn't bad.
Yeah. Yeah, they were okay. I mean, look, I'm happy they
Isaiah Harris
addressed.
before he got the doghouse. Yeah.
Isaiah Harris. Okay, I mean, come on, we jumped the shark.
Well, no, do you guys remember where we were at? Like,
Was it
4 years
Charlotte or
ago?
Central Arkansas where those receivers just went off?
I think it was the 2016 season, and I found myself saying, "Oh my God, K-State has so much talent at receiver. I don't even know how they get all these guys on the field." Remember that was when they had the 4-star kid from Texas. Who was his name? The 6'4"
Carlos Strickland.
Carlos Strickland.
Carlos.
Right? So
He's the transfer from Cal, but transferred out. Yeah.
Cole, there were a lot of
Bill
people
Snyder?
that couldn't remember Carlos Strickland's name.
Bill Snyder called somebody Carlos Strickland, right?
Well,
Yes.
I was trying to dance around it, but DY just burnt. Look, Bill,
Well,
I tried to protect you. But I think it was Sebastian Taylor, wasn't it? Sebastian Taylor and Carlos Strickland, he got mixed up.
yeah, I think you're right. Well, they're both tall. So, but they had Carlos Strickland, they had Zuber, who was playing as a true freshman. They had Pringle in his first year. We all heard the hype about him, and Isaiah Harris, and I'm just thinking.
I remember Isaiah Harris had a big game in.
He had over 100 yards. He was
I was excited for him at one point in time, but
I believe he burnt Central Arkansas. Was it Central Arkansas, guys?
I mean, if that was Central Arkansas, they just got it bad. They got Isaiah Harris and Byron Pringle to go routes. They got Mike McCoy running them over. It was just the miss.
That was Charlotte. Now we're mixing things up. That was Charlotte. Okay, don't you put that on Central Arkansas. That was Charlotte.
Yeah, well, I just remember having to cover a K-State women's basketball against Central Arkansas one time, and their mascot was the Sugar Bears, and I had to write the Sugar Bears in my story multiple times. So that one really sticks with me.
How do we get here?
We've gone off the rails now.
Yeah.
Look, DY I'm just happy they addressed receiver because DY heard me in the press box in the West Virginia game 2019. I was just complaining relentlessly to him that they weren't ever addressing receiver. They had too many guys on scholarship that maybe didn't warrant it. And so
Cole, did you watch the first play of that game? They hit like an 80-yard home run to a receiver.
Yes, I did. Yeah, that was great. And things did not go well in the second half.
Landry Weber had like an insane one.
He did
on the sideline in that game.
Yes, he did. I wasn't complaining about some of the we won't name names, but there were some other guys that I took issue with that were on scholarship. So, anyways,
what Cole taking issue with scholarship player? I have never
complaining. Hey, this is the new and improved.
And then going back to what we were originally talking about too, in regards to the tight ends and my concern there, in their defense, I don't think there's been a whole lot of avenues open to them to upgrade that spot. So it's not like they're stubbing their toe or taking a nosedive. Tight ends kind of the position this year where it's like there's nothing in the junior college market or the transfer market. I think Alabama just took a kid from Kansas that was at Hutchinson Community College last year that had 3 catches, and it took him on scholarship. So that's how desperate teams are at tight end right now.
Well, this is where I would just say that they need some of these young. I mean, how many young it's been like Will Swanson, Cody Stufflebeam. I mean, I don't even know where he's
Cody Stufflebeam's on defensive line now.
I was like, I feel like he moved to switch position. But they had, how many
Connor Fox, he's been hurt.
But there's even another one. There's another young tight end that they've had in the program. I mean, this is where I would just say, you got to develop them. They have to be ready to play.
They still have Samuel Wheeler, Connor Fox, and Will Swanson, those 3, and they'll bring in 2 freshmen.
Christian Moore, that was the other one I was trying to think
he's kind of a fullback, and then they'll have Braden Lofton and Garrett Oakley arrive in the summer.
Oakley has a lot of potential. I mean, I think we all we like him, but it'll probably be a little early. He's got to put on some weight right now. Wheeler's obviously got to stay healthy, and we know he's been banged up throughout much of his career. So Fox did he break both of his feet last year?
Yeah, I think he has a broken foot again. Like Fox is, Connor Fox has not been healthy.
Has he been practicing in the basketball practice arena? What is going on?
Well, there's a great discussion topic. Does the foot curse leave with Bruce Weber? Or does it stick around with Jerome Tang? Do they need to still burn the practice facility down?
They just gave it to Connor Fox. No, and nothing against Connor Fox. I think he looks the part. Don't get me wrong. He really does. He is someone that is really put together, but I don't know that he's been healthy at Kansas State in his entire career for 9 straight months. It just hasn't happened for him.
Do you think, DY, they moved Ben Sinnott to tight end more and put him there?
I mean,
they seem to really love him.
He's kind of like that H-back guy that can kind of move around. He's just perfect. They think he's going to play on Sundays, though. I'll tell you that much. He's that much of a talent.
Yeah, I knew they loved him, and so certainly you think they'd get creative with him, at least with maybe some of the lack of weapons in the tight end room. So
Yeah, he's
that'll
athletic.
help.
Ben Sennett's going to be someone the fans are well aware of by the end of 2022. They probably should already be. This staff loves him a lot.
Well, I'm glad you bring him up. I knew that, but had forgotten that. That makes me feel a little bit better about tight end. And I think the point is, like, right now they have a lot of weapons to play with. Now, we have done this before, like Cole was saying with the 2016 receiver conversation, where at K-State, we're not used to having very nice, shiny objects on the offensive side of the ball. So you get a couple guys that, you can kind of squint and see it, like a little bit of a gleam there, maybe to rub it down. So we get very excited about something like this, but it does seem like they have a lot of options for Colin Klein to play with here offensively.
Yeah, you mentioned how you guys kind of did that with the 2016 receivers. We've kind of done that with the running backs a little bit, right? Now they're all gone. Like we had the Mike McCoy thing that was unfortunate, then the Joe Irvin and Jacardia, right? Now they're all gone. So, and that's why they had to add Anthony Freeze.
Yeah. Can I throw in one last kind of totally random note to end the podcast on here, because I don't even think we've discussed it in our group chat, and I'm very interested to see how you guys react to this.
Oh gosh, this is on live television.
It is, yes, live YouTube television. Did you see who went to a rookie camp tryout and actually did get like at least a camp deal? Like impressed enough there to get.
No, yes, I did. I know who you're talking about. It's Jonathan Alexander.
It is Jonathan Alexander. Your thoughts on Jonathan Alexander showing out at the Chicago Bears rookie minicamp?
Well, I was going to text it to you guys when I saw it last night when he said he got a 3-year deal, and I was saying, there's no way in hell he got a 3-year deal. I don't. I
still don't believe it.
I don't believe that.
Like he said he got a 3-year deal.
It says like it's on Twitter or something about.
He said he was going to show out for the next 3 years for the Bears or something along those lines. So
I just saw somebody tweeting that he impressed enough to get a deal, which I assumed meant. And I'm out over my skis, I'll be honest, but I assume meant like he gets an invite back to training camp and there's no real guarantees, but he will get an opportunity, which you're not guaranteed that if you're just not. I mean, they invite a ton of rookies to these rookie mini camps. There's no guarantee of that at all. So I just figured he made it through one barrier, but judging by what the opinion was of him when he left K-State, I was a little bit surprised. Good for him, man. I wish him the best, but
yeah, I will say it's never been. Although I never thought he was like a superstar. It's not always been about the physical attributes.
No, I mean, you're right. No, he's got some physical attributes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
John, it says here, his pinned tweet, officially a Chicago Bear for the next 3 years. You got to.
Are we going to take that with a grain of salt?
Well, I don't know why you take anything he says with a grain of salt based off his history, but sure.
Yeah, he's the most believable guy.
Bears might want to talk to the K-State coaches about what might happen to that locker room.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe Byron Pringle might know something through the grapevine. I don't know.
Duke Shelley.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. You're right. Duke Shelley and Byron Pringle there. I don't know. Hey, that's their prerogative, not mine. We just gave you like an hour-long show here. I feel like the football stuff I was getting more excited about than basketball because we've been focused so much in on basketball. So I'm excited to get some football talk in. At some point, we got to discuss, look, man, the Vegas preseason Big 12 title odds are starting to roll out. K-State's sitting at like 50-1, next to last in the league in some cases.
Yeah,
like
haters.
Ooh, some haters. And Texas sitting up there at number 2.
50-1. That's great value.
Yeah, go snatch that up. There is a lot of value there. Thanks for listening once again. We appreciate 360 Vodka, Holiday Distillery. Check out the new bourbon that they have coming out. Always appreciate their support here on the podcast. Go get yourself a glow ball. You know what? If I can figure out how to get a glow ball and it's a reasonable price, I will buy a glow ball and show it to you on camera here on a future 3-Mod pod. Okay, so take that.
I'm only buying a glow ball if it's a Kansas State athlete that's got to deal with it. Then I'll buy one.
I'll buy an Elevate hoodie.
Well, we need to work on those Elevate hoodies. Yes.
I drew one up, and DY's response when I sent you the picture was LOL or oh my God. I didn't know if that was a good thing or not. He didn't like my design of the Elevate hoodie. Apparently, John didn't either. All right. Well,
I mean, it was fine. It was fine, but I would rather just get a legit one.
Okay.
I'd rather earn it. I feel like that's cheating. I would rather earn it. Stolen valor. We can't steal the valor of the Elevate hoodie. We've got to find a way to earn it. So we've got to do good enough podcasting here that we earn an Elevate hoodie. All right. We've been here long enough. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sticking with us while we jumped the shark today. Appreciate Tucker Franklin, all of his work behind the scenes. As always, we will talk to you next time on the 3 Month.